This podcast is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed. Spoiler warning for whatever is in the title of this episode.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that the Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible and all other major podcast apps.
Welcome to episode 75 of the Horror of Babylon, where we are discussing the film classic, Pet Sematary. I am Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
And we want to say thank you to our patrons, Abigail the First, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, and
Logan,
the Full Metal Patron. And we want to give a special thank you to Horsemen Comics and Gaming, which you can visit at the Morgantown Mall in Morgantown, West Virginia, or the Mall at Robinson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And you can say hello to the proprietor, Ronald III, Grampus of Christmas, who I just got a priority one message from Starfleet. He has actually quit the kitty litter. Thankfully, it's over. But he has, unfortunately, moved on to a new obsession, which is Tide Pods. He's not...
Well, that's to clean out the tasty kitty litter.
Well, he's not eating, like, the pods whole.
Yeah.
He's breaking them over his cereal.
Okay, that's fine.
And using them as, like, milk for his cereal.
It cleans the cereal.
It cleans the cereal.
Hey, have you guys tried these things? These are delicious.
Yeah.
Just because they're pretty colors doesn't mean you should eat them, Governor.
I disagree.
They're very fruity.
Hi, Ron. Welcome back to the Horror of Babylon.
Hey, guys. This again, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
We are covering a higher quality program than the last time you were on, however, though.
What are we listening to? Or what
we
are we
are
watching?
Pet Sematary.
Oh, that was this week?
Yeah.
Oh,
Didn't you rewatch it?
Sure.
What did you watch instead of Pet Sematary?
No, I watched it.
Okay.
He's just fucking with you.
All right, trigger warnings. If you're triggered by bald dumbasses.
Too late.
If you're triggered by shitty critic scores.
If you're triggered by a movie that is focused on the death of a child, then this movie may not be for you. And our of course, our discussion will feature talking about the death of children, and it is no fault to anybody's. Can be a very upsetting thing to talk about.
This movie literally haunted me for years, so...
It still does.
Yeah.
All right, so our history of Pet Sematary. Ron, tell us about the first time you saw this, and what you thought. How many times have you seen it since then, and how has your opinions evolved? Just tell us about you and this little movie.
So I've kind of watched them all, but the original one, when I first saw it, I hadn't read the books, obviously, but I watched this movie. I went into it knowing absolutely nothing. And this movie was the first time that I saw them just straight up brutally kill a kid. And I almost walked out of the theater. I was like, I cannot believe that this just happened, because, that was just something that I really had never seen before. And when I rewatched it literally an hour ago, I forgot how young that kid was. I mean, he was just a little toddler, and he was rough.
2. The character was 2. The actor was 2 going on 3.
Yeah. So I mean, I haven't watched it much over the years because I can name like 2 or 3 movies where there is a kid involved, and I can't watch them. I just cannot. That's one thing I just can't get past. I don't know why. I mean, I'll watch the Saw movies and Aliens and people getting ripped in half, but you put a kid under a Mack truck, and that's the thing that does it for me. But there was a zombie movie where this kid was in the back of an RV getting eaten by, I think, her parents. And that movie, that one just ruined me for a while too. But yeah, this one was awful. And honestly, every time I watch Pet Sematary, for the next 3 weeks, I talk like the Fred Munster character, Judge. I wouldn't go down that road.
Yeah, same. I made a promise that I wasn't going to do a bad impression of the entire recording.
I have made no such promises. Sometimes that is better.
Yeah,
That
but
is
you do
better.
better voices than I do, so...
Mrs. Creed, Mrs. Crandall goes to sleep about 9 p.m. if you want to come across the road, Mrs. Creed.
I want to play with you.
Okay, Daniel, your history with Pet Sematary.
Okay, so this was probably the year it was released on VHS. My very irresponsible aunt rented it for me, and I was entirely too young to be watching this movie, and it fucked me up for a few years.
In 1990? When you...
Okay, so it probably was after that.
Yeah.
But I was young. I'm talking like 8.
Yeah.
I'm talking I was less than 10.
I think I saw this when I was about 10. I think it was 5th grade-ish when I saw it. And I went...
No, because I still had friends when I saw this. So it was before 10.
I went into a pretty big rant on our novel episode on my history with both the book and the movie.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to regurgitate all that, but just the brief Too Long Didn't Read. I saw this way too young, and it was a foundational piece of media for me. I didn't read the book until I was in my 30s, and I didn't see the movie a second time until I was in my 30s. But like the 20-year period between seeing it as a kid and you reading the book and watching the movie again as an adult, I still think about this movie basically every day. Every time I'm outside with my son and he's playing in the yard, it's constantly pervasive in my mind. I'm not sure that there's a piece of media that has shook me harder than this movie and the novel it's based on.
I was going to say, this is my third strike in terms of movies that I saw entirely too young. The other two being Bram Stoker's Dracula and Lolita.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, Lolita I also saw, I think I was 10 at max, probably less.
What would even possess a 10-year-old to sit down and watch?
It was just on TV.
Okay.
And I was just like, what the fuck is going on? This movie's fucked up.
Yeah.
So I was probably closer to 10 because I had enough knowledge to know what I was seeing was fucked up. Mm-hmm. But too young to really grasp the severity of it.
When we cover that movie, I'm going to be including the clip of Grandpa Simpson saying, "I miss when this was implied in movies."
That's amazing. Yes, please. I miss when the pedophilia was implied. In Daniel's The Ring.
Gross.
You guys remember the movie Hereditary? Came out a few years back.
That's a movie that I'm trying to get Ryan to watch.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't think I've seen that.
He hasn't seen it, so shh.
Yeah, I'll be quiet. But that movie triggered Pet Sematary feelings for me.
It might be worse.
And I couldn't drive home. I was by myself when I watched that movie, and I was terrified to go anywhere. I had to call my daughter, Lakin, if you're listening. Thank you for this. I had to call her.
She does not listen.
She might.
I'm gonna send her this episode.
Okay.
Yeah, she had to talk me down and get me back to the hotel.
Okay.
It might be worse than Pet Sematary in terms of child death triggering.
Oh my God, it's so bad.
It might be, Ryan.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to watch that.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
It really is. It really is.
The vampire's a pure myth, superstition. I may be able to bring you proof that the superstition of yesterday can become the scientific reality of today.
All right, speaking of fucked up, let's jump into background. And I'm going to kick this off with some numbers. Now, normally, Daniel and I do more bitching about Rotten Tomatoes than anything else. We don't normally include the Rotten Tomatoes score in our background. But I saw this while I was researching, and I just wanted to bring these numbers up because I find this shocking.
I'm kind of bad.
So the Rotten Tomato score from the critics is 51%. The audience score is 60%, and the IMDb average rating is 6.5 out of 10.
Like, I know movies aren't objective, but like any measure I can think of by which someone should judge a movie, acting, cinematography, pacing, script, like I don't see any glaring flaws.
If I had to guess why those scores are so low, it's just people watching the movie and saying, maybe it's a good movie, but I didn't enjoy watching that because it made me sick because they killed a kid with that truck.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it a bad score because I did not enjoy watching it.
Maybe.
And that's
Well,
what it...
But
Go ahead,
honestly, look at I mean, when I was watching it, I was paying attention kind of the acting. The kids were terrible. Tasha Yar was marginal. What was the ghost name?
Victor Pascal.
Pascal was pretty good. Pascal was great. And obviously Judd was fantastic. But, you know, that means half the cast was like, I mean, as far as their acting goes. The story was good, though.
I had some comments to bring up on the performances. So let's table that until characters,
Okay.
and we'll kind of talk about each of them, because I also have some opinions, because I also think there are some bad performances in this movie. And as much as I love this movie, and as much as I don't like the remake, I think the remake has a couple things that are done better, and some of them are performances. We'll get to that. But the point that I was originally trying to make about, and this is a good example as to why Rotten Tomatoes is it's a bad site, is because it boils things down into a binary decision. Did you like this movie, yes or no? And if you're a parent and you watch this movie and you just can't get over the fact that they murdered this child in the road, and it makes you sick to your stomach and makes you super upset, and if you're asked, did you like this movie, you would probably say no. You may be able to objectively say, well, there's a lot of things that are good about this movie. The script is really well written. The effects are really great. The sets are amazing. But because you're being forced into this binary answer, yes or no, is the movie good, you might have to say no because the emotional aspect of it outweighs all of that for you. And that's why I don't like Rotten Tomatoes. But. Okay, so let's get into some factoids. So I actually watched the making of documentary about this today, and I'm going to try and not interject 1,000 factoids into this episode.
Try.
But I literally just sat through 90 minutes of history on this movie, and it was super fascinating. But more or less, the book was published in 1983, and the producer of this film, she got a hold of the screenplay that Stephen King wrote for it, because after it came out, the book came out and it was a big success. He wrote a screenplay and he put it out there to several studios and said, I will let this movie be made on 2 conditions. 1, you use my screenplay, and 2, you film it in Maine. And at the time, in like the mid to late 80s, horror was kind of going through a decline, because the peak in the late 70s of the slasher movies, and then in the early 80s you have all the Stephen King movies coming out, and it's kind of starting to go downhill, and people aren't looking to invest in horror movies as much, and especially Stephen King movies. The industry feel at the time was Stephen King was kind of a flash in the pan thing, and these movies based on his spooky books aren't going to continue to make money, so we should go away from that. Flash forward to 1988, when the Screenwriters Guild goes on strike, and all of a sudden, studios are looking at their 1989 schedules, and they don't have enough scripts to shoot movies for to fill movie theaters in 1989. So the producer who's in charge of this movie, whose name I should have had written down, I'm sorry, one second, but she's important, and I need to credit her.
Don't wanna be buried
in the pet cemetery. I don't want to live my life again.
I might add that to my Gym Tunes playlist.
Was there a deal with Ramones in this movie?
Yeah, and I'll bring that up later.
Okay.
And I don't see... Maybe... I don't know. But it was...
If the name comes to Ryan, we'll interject it.
Yeah, but it was a woman, and she had read the screenplay when he put it out there to studios, and she loved it. And she actually worked for multiple. She started at Universal, and then she moved to Paramount, and she tried to get both of them to make the movie, and they said no, we're not making Stephen King movies. We're not investing in horror movies. We don't want to do this. And then the Screenwriters Guild strike happened, and they had Paramount had this staff meeting with all the execs, and they said, we need scripts that are already written and need no more work. And she said, I've got one. So that's how this movie got greenlit, and that's probably the only reason they agreed to do the actual production in Maine, because that probably would have been a deal breaker if it weren't for the writer's strike. So eventually that happened. The movie got made. It premiered April 21st, 1989, obviously based on the novel Pet Sematary by Stephen King, with a screenplay written by Stephen King. If you're not familiar, he actually has written screenplays for a lot of the adaptations of his own work. He wrote the screenplay for the Shining miniseries, Silver Bullet, which is based off his novella Cycle of the Werewolf. He wrote an original screenplay for Sleepwalkers, a film about cat people incest where Mark Hamill has a cameo.
Just like one of my fan fictions.
Yeah. He wrote this, and he wrote the screenplays for Cat's Eye, Cell, and Creepshow, which are all based off of his works.
I love Cat's Eye.
Yeah, Cat's Eye is a great movie.
Wait, so if he's writing all the screenplays for his own work, why do the movie or the TV adaptations usually suck?
Well,
multiple reasons, probably.
I can't really adjust that without getting into specifics, because I like a lot of them, not all of them, but I like a lot of them. Yeah. Part of it is
like a budget issue.
It's a production cost.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Part of it is like the talent pool that TV can pull from as opposed to film, and then another part of it is just content that most of even the scripts that he writes for television adaptations are way toned down compared to the novels.
Yeah, and some things just don't translate as well.
This one thing that this had going for it is that it's a theatrical film, and they didn't really have to pull any punches in terms of translating the book onto film, and so he could and because of the writer's strike, he basically got to do whatever he wanted and put the studio in its place and say, you're going to play ball with me if you want this script.
I hear that in his voice too.
Yeah.
I can't do a good Stephen King, but I know his voice.
No. So this film was directed by Mary Lambert, and this is actually her second feature film. She went to art school and was trained as a painter.
Huh.
And in terms of film, she started directing music videos. And if you look at her IMDb page, it's 80% or more music videos. She's done way more music videos than film. And the big iconic one that she did was Madonna's Like a Virgin. So she did Pet Sematary was her second film. Pet Sematary 2 was her fourth film. She also directed episodes of Tales from the Crypt, and she directed Halloween Town 2, Calabar's Revenge, and Urban Legends Bloody Mary.
Sometime for either a pre-show or maybe just some content, we should try Urban Legends like that out.
I watched part of the original Urban Legends as a kid and didn't like it.
It's not very good.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean I wouldn't like it now.
Yeah.
And that also doesn't mean we couldn't get a good episode out of it. Valerian.
I just pictured us going in a bathroom and saying Bloody Mary 3 times.
I thought about doing a video for the YouTube. The film had an estimated budget of $11.5 million. It grossed $57.5 million in the U.S. and Canada.
Not bad.
That's pretty good after all the crap the studio said about not wanting to make this movie. And this statistic wasn't on the wiki or IMDb, but in the making of documentary, they gave an additional statistic, which to me is even more impressive. Its video rental store gross was $26.5 million.
Yeah. Because irresponsible aunts kept renting it for Daniel.
That's how I saw it. Yeah. I saw it through a video rental store. Yeah. It has one sequel, Pet Sematary 2 from 1992, same director. We will be reviewing that one next week. It has one remake from 2019. It was filmed in Maine, and the scenes with all the scenes in nature were filmed in the Acadia National Park. And if you want to find out more, you can check out Unearthed and Untold, The Path to Pet Sematary, which is a very good making of documentary.
We should go to that national park.
I'll put it on our road trip list.
And that's that. Another story in the classic, infallible 3-act structure. Good enough for Aristotle, good enough for The Simpsons.
Mr. Sislak, I have a feeling there's going to be one more act to this story.
Well, I'm not hanging around for that. 4 acts.
Okay, so moving on to structure and themes, Daniel, talk to us about how this film adapts the novel.
Pretty well. The novel, when we talked about it, we talked about how it's mostly from Lewis's perspective. And this, films are different. It's not from first person, but it mostly follows him around.
Yeah.
Until it follows Rachel around, but that's when it does in the book as well.
And it's like the book, it's mostly chronological.
At point A to point B, nice straight journey.
Which is unusual for a Stephen King story.
Because he likes to hop around.
He does like to hop around a lot.
Yeah. You lose a little bit of the internal thoughts of the characters, especially Lewis, because that's where a lot of his character came from in the book.
We'll talk more about this when we get to characters, but I do feel like you lose a little bit of Lewis's character in this adaptation, because there's 2 words that jump out to me when I think about Lewis Creed. One is dad, which is you mostly get that here, but the other one is doctor. And the thing about the novel is he treats everything so clinically.
Yeah. And
you see that through his inner dialogue, how he's always analyzing everything and trying to find rational reasons for everything. And that just doesn't translate into film, and it's something you miss, but I don't think it hurts.
It's just one of those big differences.
Yeah.
What were we talking? Oh, how's it adapt the novel?
Yeah.
There are a few things cut out, like Judd's wife is gone. Mm-hmm. Instead they sort of follow around the caretaker Missy
Dandridge.
Yeah.
No better, no worse.
I forgot she hung herself. And I promise you 100% I was sitting there, and when I saw it, I went, so you already know.
You're bad.
Yeah.
How's it hanging, Missy? No better, no worse.
I've been trying to find a GIF of that scene, because I was going to send it to Hef and go, hey, check out the DDLC live action adaptation.
Okay. Ron, when you first saw this movie, back in the 80s, because you were alive. I'm kidding. Daniel and I were alive in the 80s too.
Yeah, we were just still on the teat.
Yeah, we're still on the teat. So what were your, aside from the obvious just shock and awe about killing the kid, that aside, what were some of your takeaways from the movie, your kind of impressions?
Honestly, and this, I'm going to not make some friends here. I thought the movie back then, it fits better now, but it seemed a little bit disjointed. Like, I couldn't figure out why Tasha Yar's sister's story arc was so important to her, and why she was so, I guess, so horrific looking. That seemed like it was kind of added on. The Missy thing seemed kind of added on. I mean, they all kind of tie together loosely, but him being a doctor, other than picking up, what was his name? Cash Cow?
Victor Pascal.
Yeah, Cash Cow.
Pascal. Pascal. He was. Daddy was there when he was. I can't remember it. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, other than picking up him, the whole doctor thing. I guess at the end, he's got the syringes and whatnot, and the scalpel. Good God. But yeah, it just seemed like it was kind of patchwork together.
So, I can give you a little bit of background here. So, and this is better explained in the novel. And
that's what I think I'm missing, because I didn't read the novel. I think I missed, like you guys were talking about, the inner monologue that would have made his doctor analytical stuff make a whole lot more sense.
Okay, so let me jump into our major theme, and I will be able to explain at least Rachel and Zelda to you a little bit better. So obviously, the major theme of the film and the book is death, and it's not just a grim, dark story about people dying. It's also like a really honest tale about how people perceive death, how people communicate about death between adults, how people talk about death with their children, and how it pertains to other people and animals dying. And in the book and in the movie, you get 4 very distinct views on death. You have Judd, who is the elderly man who has lived a long life. It never says it in the movie, but in the book, he was born in the year 1900. So he was literally born with the century and has seen lots of people come and go, and has come to know that, dead is sometimes better. And not even in a grim sense, just like people live their lives and they go, and he's comfortable with it.
Sometimes stomach cancer hurts too bad.
Yeah. And then you have Lewis, who is a doctor, who views death in a very clinical, rational, logical way.
Right.
And that you have Rachel, who is another adult, but has a very irrational, emotional fear of death because of the experience that she had with her sister when she was a child.
Gotcha.
And then the 4th one is Ellie, who is a child who doesn't understand death and is basically just curious. So the book does a better job, but I think the movie does a decent job as well of showing you these 4 different people and their 4 different views on death.
Real distinct views, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously all of this is fleshed out better in a 500-page book as opposed to a 90-minute movie.
Right. Yeah.
But I personally think the movie does a pretty decent job of doing that. One thing I will comment on is the Missy Dandridge hanging herself is added. That is not in the novel at all.
Was she a character in the novel?
Yes, but she was their housekeeper and their babysitter,
And that was kind of it.
and that was it.
Like she gave sympathy at Gage's funeral.
Yeah, like there's a big scene between her and Lewis at the funeral where she like tries to comfort Lewis. That's kind of the most of her character. I think like my one big criticism of this movie is that I wish the time that they spent on Missy Dandridge would have been spent on Judd's wife, Norma, who is not in the movie at all. So in the book, when they move into the house, they meet Judd and his wife, Norma, and she has arthritis really bad, like for years, and like chronic arthritis, and she's kind of slowly dying. And the kind of like in the same way it shows like 4 distinct views on death, it also shows like two major deaths of characters that are completely opposite. In the book, Judd's wife dies, and she dies of this disease that she's had for a long time. She has lived a long life. She has lived a happy life. The death was expected. It was not sudden. People are given time to grieve and process it healthily. That's the first death that happens in the book. And then several months later in the story, Gage is hit by the truck. And it's the exact opposite. It's a young person who dies suddenly and violently. And people cannot process it, cannot grieve properly, cannot deal with it. So you get to see like the most ideal death you could basically have versus basically the worst death that you can kind of imagine. And they mirror each other and parallel each other, and really you get to see all four of those different views on death. Ellie, Judd, Lewis, and Rachel. You get to see how all four of them handle Norma's death, and then you get to see how all four of them handle Gage's death.
See, I think that would have been much more impactful if they could have translated that to the movie.
I think
that would be a lot more interesting.
I think that they don't spend a lot of time on Missy Dandridge, but I think it would have been time better spent on Norma Crandall. I just talked a lot. Daniel, what do you think?
I don't really have anything to add. That was like really nice and concise on what happens in the book, the views of death. And I also agree, I'd rather have had Norma over Missy. I think that Norma's story might have taken a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So that so he was trying to get a first death in there quicker, like screenplay wise,
and kind of add to the spookiness of it.
Yeah.
And also, the book is a really slow burn.
Yeah, it's a very slow burn.
So I think in the movie they wanted to have something kind of spooky and violent happen in the first half of the story.
Yeah, and that is like a big difference between. These days, you could probably get away with almost a straight adaptation because people are really into those like slow burn, elevated horror movies that take themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
So you could probably do that now. Back then, Stephen King, when he's working on the screenplay, goes, okay, I have 90 minutes. What are the beats I have to hit? And maybe he has a little bit more time, maybe he has a little bit less, or he doesn't have any less, but maybe he has a little bit more to work with. But Stephen King has been writing long enough and been in the industry long enough to know this is what I have to do to make the story more concise.
Yeah, and honestly, it may be more important that the movie is tighter and shorter as opposed to exploring like these deeper themes.
For a general audience, especially at the time.
Yeah, and assuming that 90% of your audience has not read the book.
Yeah. Now we have movies like Skinamarink where people stare at a wall for 2.5 hours and go, this is art. So this is the scariest art I have ever seen. You know what I mean?
Okay,
but tastes have changed.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
We gotta keep going. Let's move on to characters, and we're gonna talk about Lewis Creed, Dale Midkiff. We already talked a little bit about. I feel like his story as a father is pretty well adapted. Him as a doctor, a little less so.
A little less so. That's a little hard unless you wanted to make some of his like internal dialogue, actual dialogue.
Yeah, which always comes across a little awkward in movies.
Yeah.
Going back to what Ron was saying, I do think that there are a few not. I don't want to say bad, but not as good performances in this movie, and I think Dale Midkiff is one of them.
Oh, I thought he was fine.
There was a couple times when he would, like the incredulous, like I've had my mind blown, I'm checking out kind of thing. He does that like 3 times in the movie, like when the cat comes back, when Gage comes back, and when Tasha comes back. And I'm going to keep calling her Tasha to acknowledge that.
No, that's fine.
But
what do you want me to do? Throw her in a pile of black goo and watch her melt?
God, please no. But I just think he has that one facial expression, and he kept using it. It's the exact same blank stare.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Yeah, I can't talk to you right now.
He was hired for this movie because he was good looking. the director explicitly says that in the making of documentary, not for his acting skill, because
People liked perms back then.
because he was pretty and he had been in movies before, and he was somebody that they could afford that was known and pretty.
Yeah.
And something that he says in his interview is that at the time of this movie, he was not a parent yet, and he had trouble, like, relating to Lewis and his grief in terms of Gage. And I saw that on the screen even before I heard him say that in an interview.
I mean, he was all like, man, fuck this kid. My kid.
and this is one of the things that I think is improved. I think the guy who plays Lewis in the remake is better.
I'll have to wait till I rewatch it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while either.
The memories of walking out of the theater are still coloring my perception.
Have you not seen it since it was in theaters?
No.
I have rewatched it one time.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
We'll get. I'm gonna watch it like right before I come up here.
Okay. Ron, tell us about Rachel Creed, Denise Crosby.
What can be said?
Is she related to like the Crosby?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, she is.
Which Crosby? Like Crosby, Stills, and Nash?
Yeah. And
Really?
Young. And Young. No. Actually, she might be. I don't know. He's talking.
Oh,
I was thinking about the singer.
Oh, Crosby, Stills, Nash. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. He was.
Yeah, no.
I mean, maybe she is. I don't know.
no, I thought she did a really good job. I thought she did fine. The end makeup was probably some of the best like effects reveal I saw as a young lad, and I was very impressed by it, and the oozing and whatnot. Other than Pascal's brain land on the table, I mean that was kind of good, but her whole face thing was pretty awesome.
She is not related to the Crosby of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, but she is the granddaughter of Bing Crosby.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking
really?
of. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bing Crosby.
No, I think she's one of the stronger performances in this movie. Yeah. I'm a little biased because of Star Trek.
I love that. I love your biases.
But
biases.
To me, there are two other performances in this movie that I feel like are super iconic and kind of outweigh her a little bit. But I do think she is very solid.
The scene in the funeral home was great. I was impressed by her performance there. That was pretty good.
I also liked when she sees Gage again. It just reminds me of how like a mom might actually react if they see their dead kid back.
Yeah.
So two factoids from the making of the funeral scene. Well, one thing, after watching the making of a documentary, I have gained a lot of respect for Mary Lambert, the director, because she had a very specific vision for this movie along with Stephen King, and she fought the studio on several different things, and she ended up winning on most of these issues. One thing is they wanted to cut the funeral scene entirely because it was too dark, and they felt like audiences wouldn't sit through it, and she fought them until they backed down, and she got to keep it in the movie. But she said she recut that scene. She couldn't even tell you how many number of times until she was able to get something that everybody was happy with.
Yeah. It worked. I liked the being in there.
Yeah. And then the end scene with Rachel coming back with the prosthetic on her face, they had to reshoot that because when they were in Maine, they shot a different ending, and then when they were editing, they actually decided they needed to go darker and more violent. So they brought her and Dale Midkiff into LA and reshot that entire scene.
Huh.
What was the other ending?
So the ending that they shot. Okay, so there's actually three versions. In the screenplay, Stephen King actually wrote a different ending that was in the book. The ending he wrote was that Rachel comes into the kitchen and finds Lewis sitting on the floor playing solitaire. The phone rings and it's the daughter, and Rachel answers the phone and speaks normally to her and says, "Don't worry, hey Ellie, our family will be together again soon." And then she like grins and shows like these distorted teeth with like bugs crawling in and out of her teeth, and then it fades to black. That's what he wrote. They decided not to shoot that, and they what they shot when they were filming in Maine was a much more subtle ending, where he's on the floor playing solitaire waiting for her to come back, and he hears her come in through the door, and he looks up and he just sees the door open, and her arm covered in dirt reaches into the kitchen, and then it fades to black. That's what they shot, and then they decided, nope, that's not going to work. We need to punch the audience in the face right as they're about to walk out of the theater. So they ended up going with this, and it's what they ended up shooting is almost exactly what's in the book.
Darling.
Yeah, which is hilarious.
And dirt fell from its mouth.
Daniel, what do you're not a big fan of Rachel from the book. How do you feel about Rachel in the movie?
A lot of what I don't like about her from the book all comes from Lewis's perspective, and that's not in this. So
yeah,
so it's a lot easier for me to go, man, that's kind of just fucked up what's happening to her, because I don't have this guy going, she always does this over and over again.
Yeah, in the book, Lewis is constantly talking about how she uses arguments to manipulate him and get her way.
And she only apologizes once she gets her way. And it's... I made a couple edgelord jokes when we recorded that episode. Didn't go over well. But that is my least favorite thing for any person to do. One of them. It's not great. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, since you're not in Lewis's head, you can assume that like maybe the character in the movie is still having those thoughts.
Yeah.
But you're not being subjected to them.
Yeah.
So your opinion is not being colored by Lewis's opinion.
No, it's just here's a woman. There's her traumas, and that's the only instance I have where, as opposed to the book where it goes, this is just one of. He doesn't say that. Paraphrasing. This is just like one of 1,000 times this has happened.
Mm-hmm. And again, I really enjoy, just aside from Denise Crosby, I really appreciate the character because I think that it's just phenomenal that she is a functioning adult and not in an asylum after what she went through as a kid.
I still hate her parents more.
Oh yeah, her parents are the absolute worst.
Yeah. Like, I can find justifications for Rachel. I can't find any for going, let's leave our... How old was she again? Like 9? 8?
8 or 9, yeah.
8-year-old daughter to take care of our meningitis daughter.
Yeah.
That, to me, to this day, is still baffling.
Yeah.
And I know parents that are that irresponsible, and it makes me so mad.
Yeah, there's no justification. I'm like... Yes, obviously, her parents were suffering too. Obviously, they were stressed out. Obviously, they needed a break.
Get a sitter.
Take the daughter out with you. Hire a nurse for the night.
Yeah,
take turns going out.
Even if they didn't have enough money for... Because I said they should have had money, but then you pointed out, oh no, they said that they were going through a hard time. Then you could have had enough money for a sitter.
Yeah.
Like, you could have found somebody.
You could have fucking given her a Benadryl and let her pass out.
Like, yeah, just something.
But yeah, there's no excuse for leaving your 8-year-old daughter to deal with your...
That's my rant on the Goldmans.
But they suck. Yeah, I mean, there's no...
And then the dad has the same "I got my way" apology.
Okay, so Zelda. Let's talk about Rachel's sister Zelda. Did you guys know that she's played by a man?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the only piece of trivia I knew.
Really?
Yeah. It's the only piece of trivia I knew about this movie.
Well, rather an 18-year-old boy. They actually started auditioning women for it, and Mary Lambert, the director, she decided to try to audition some young, thin men because she said the women who were auditioning were not going far enough. They were not owning it. They weren't, and she eventually found...
They weren't gross enough.
Yeah, they weren't being gross enough. And I think his name is Patrick something, but he...
Pascal?
No. Let me get his name real quick, because he does a phenomenal job.
He does a phenomenal job. Never get out of bed again. Rachel! Andrew. It's up there. Zelda. Andrew
Hubatsik. Is he
Polish?
Andrew Hubestink, maybe. I don't know.
Fellow Poles, let me hear it.
But yeah, okay, so this is the coolest thing about his story. The makeup that they created for him, they could only put on him once. So they put it on him, and then he filmed for 24 straight hours and did everything. And
Holy cow.
And then when it was over, he was so sick of it, he tried to rip it off, and it was peeling off his skin. And they actually had to put a dissolvent on the makeup on his skin to dissolve it and melt it off of him.
Okay, so quick sidebar. When I'm watching movies like this, that's one of the things that I really watch for, is because a passion of mine is like special effects and visual effects, stuff like that. I volunteered to be Freddy Krueger at a haunted hayride, and I tried this whole head prosthetic stuff, this goo, and I put this stuff literally all over my head. I was in this thing for probably 9 hours. At the end of the night, my beard had grown into the stuff, and I was literally pulling out like hair off my chin as I was trying to peel this thing off. So that is actually a thing, and it is painful as hell.
Yeah, and that's not as scary as imagining you with a beard.
It wasn't a full beard.
I'm just sitting here going, man, people can grow beards in 9 hours?
I shave my head, and like I have like a centimeter of hair the next day. It's like,
wow,
it's annoying.
Yep.
But yeah, Zelda to me, like aside from Gage in the truck, Zelda was probably the most traumatizing thing about the movie as a kid. Like I had nightmares about Zelda.
When I was a kid, I was confused by Zelda's plot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mostly because I'm like, that's not a spooky ghost. Well, why are we talking about this?
I didn't think that deeply about crap as a kid. Yeah. I just knew that Rachel scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, it was...
Okay, let's keep going. Judd Crandall, played by Fred Gwynn.
Star of the show.
Star of the show.
I don't know how else to say it. He's the best part about this movie.
And he was another thing that the studio said no on.
What?
Because he was Herman Munster, the studio said, no, he's a comedic actor. This is a horror movie. We don't want him in it. And Mary Lambert said, fuck you guys. We're having Fred Gwynn, or I'm going to shit on your face.
I love that these days, like, horror directors and a lot of horror actors and really well-made ones all have a comedic background. So, we have the, like, opposite issue these days.
The reason she wanted him was twofold. One, she knew he had the range to do it.
Yeah.
And two, she wanted somebody that the public viewed as a happy comedic person, and she wanted to take that public happy figure and put them in a very dark place to purposely fuck with the audience.
He's so iconic that South Park is still poking fun at him.
Yeah.
You can't go down that road.
Can't go down that road. Daniel lives down that road. He'll fuck your cats.
He'll throw you in a well.
He'll throw you in a well.
Tell you to crawl back up and be his wife.
Crawl out and be his wife. Sometimes a man just wants to put it in some strange flesh.
Ask the girl in the well to do things that his wife won't do.
You can't tell your wife you want to put it in a can sometimes. Norma, flip over.
That is the one thing we lost. We will never get to hear this dude talk about a whorehouse.
In the book, he admits to going to see prostitutes. The reasoning is sometimes a man just wants to put it in some strange flesh.
Oh my god.
and then the possessed Gage body is all like, yeah, Norma knew, and she fucked all your friends.
Jesus.
In the book, anyone reanimated from the Micmac burial ground knows things. They know dark secrets, and they reveal them. And Gage, to distract Judd, Gage says, Norma knew that you were fucking people, and she did it too. And they laughed at you. She fucked all of your friends, and they laughed at you. And that's what upsets him, and Gage is able to kill him because he's so upset.
It's great.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
I forget just how intense it is every time I read the book.
It's
too.
pretty, yeah. Ron, did you watch The Munsters as a kid?
Oh yeah, first run.
Yeah. No comment. No comment. I did too. I watched a lot of TV Land as a kid. My favorites were Beverly Hillbillies, The Munsters, and Gilligan's Island.
Have you watched the Rob Zombie remake yet?
I have not.
We should watch that together.
I don't know if I can.
I'll bring us beers.
Funnily enough, last night I was visiting my mother, and she had the TV on, and she was watching My Cousin Vinny, where Fred Gwynn plays the judge in that movie. And he's making all his rulings, and I'm just picturing it in Judd Crandall's voice, and it's just I don't know.
I forgot he was in that.
Yeah, he's just the judge.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's funny. So at the time when you first saw this, Ron, was Fred Gwynn still like a standout then?
I mean, the Munsters had pretty much wrapped up, and I kind of took him as an actor that was just trying to, pay the bills at that time. I didn't really think of him as Fred Munster. I think when I saw him, I was like, oh yeah, I guess that kind of was Fred Munster, but I didn't see him as that character. He was just some, country bumpkin old guy.
This was the first thing I ever saw him in.
Okay, all right, let's keep going. Kids, so let's start with Ellie Creed, who is played by Blaise Burdall, and her twin sister, who was uncredited.
Huh.
Really?
Yeah.
Neither one of them could act.
They only did 3 movies. Blaise Burdall only did 3 movies. Pet Sematary, We're Back, A Dinosaur Story.
A movie that also strangely freaks me out.
And then...
What?
Yeah, that movie scared me as a kid.
And another animated film, JG and the BC Kids, that was made in 2020. So this is actually their only live-action theatrical film. And I don't like bashing on kid actors, but yeah, I think they hired these girls because they were twins and could get double the work out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Is when you said earlier the kids suck, were you can you elaborate on that, Ronald?
Those girls, the acting was terrible. I mean, it wasn't, and I know they're kids, and I know that's not, it's hard for kids to do that because they don't have a whole lot of experience with this kind of stuff. But no, it was laughable. It was so bad, I thought. Yeah, that's just.
I probably wouldn't go as far as to say it was laughable, but I do think that it's hard because these days, generally speaking, child actors are held to a much higher standard. And you think about like the kids in the new It movies. I haven't seen it, but I hear the kids in Stranger Things are very good, and just a lot of things these days have very talented children actors.
Yeah, and I think that the kids these days are actually older, but they are just very, they look younger than they really are. But you take a girl that's, how old was she supposed to be in this movie? Like
5,
9, 10? She was 5?
But
she was.
I don't think they ever explicitly say her age in the movie. In the novel, she was 5 because she was starting kindergarten.
Okay. So yeah, she was probably around that age. I mean, she really wasn't that old. So I can't, beat on him too much for not being a seasoned actor. But
and you're right, they do tend to age up child actors a little bit. Like I said with It, in the novel and in the original miniseries, they're supposed to be like age 11. In the new movies, they age them up to like 13, almost 14, and that lets them use like older, more experienced actors. And sometimes they just play them as younger.
Yeah. I mean, we had a 35-year-old Steve McQueen playing an 18-year-old.
He was 28. And it doesn't matter because you can swim in those blue eyes.
They were dreamy.
Yep. Daniel, what do you think of Ellie Creed?
She left a little to be desired, but I didn't think it was that bad. I was just like, she's a kid.
Yeah.
I've seen way worse. I've seen way worse get a pass, I guess. Like the Silent Hill movie. Is the one thing I would have changed about that movie is I would have cut that kid actor and replaced her with almost anybody. I would have replaced her with her.
And it wasn't fair of me to say generally like child actors are better today, because obviously there are some really iconic child performances in the late 80s and early 90s. I mean, that's Macaulay Culkin's high point. Him and Elijah Wood in The Good Son, they are both phenomenal. That's the same time Stand By Me and all the kids in Stand By Me, like that, they're all amazing.
Yeah.
Like, there are good child performances from that era.
All their budget went to get to Fred, so
Yeah, they gave all their money to Fred Gwynn.
and the makeup for Zelda, and they're like, okay, we have $5. What child actors can we afford?
Okay. Got the last two. Got to keep going. So Gage Creed, played by Miko Hughes. I think this kid was really fantastic.
His voice creeps me out with exactly with one exception. Like when he's going, "I want to play with you," that freaks me out. But every time Lewis stabs him in the neck with the needle and he screams, I laugh my ass off because he sounds like, I don't know, like one of the Munchkins from Wizard of Oz getting their cheeks pinched or something. That's what I imagine. It's like,
It's funny you say that because he was dressed as Oz the Great and Terrible.
Yeah, I know that, but every time I hear that noise he makes, I think of Oz like punting one of those guys.
One of the Munchkins.
Yeah.
We represent the lollipop.
Yeah. So that noise is the one thing that takes me out of it every time.
I've never had that.
Not even like the small person or the doll. I don't know what it was that like wrestles with them.
It's a doll.
Okay.
Yeah. They made two mannequins for Judd. One for when Gage slashes his face.
Yeah.
And then a second one for when Lewis finds him under the bed and his face is all mangled.
They did a good job.
They did. And this is a funny story. If I was only going to share one story from the documentary, it'd be this one. So the Maine state troopers would stop in every once in a while just to check on the set and make sure everything was safe and everything was going all right. And the day they were doing that scene, a Maine state trooper stopped in, and he opened the door and saw Fred Gwyn's mannequin under the bed.
My God.
And thought it was real. And my thought as I'm hearing this is like, oh, he's going to be like, everybody stop, this is a crime scene. No, he ran away to the bathroom and threw up.
Nothing but our best and bravest for state troopers.
Well, I think the crime rate in Maine it's not exactly New York City.
Yeah.
I guess, but based
That's
off of
fair.
Stephen King novels, I figured they find a mangled body in the woods every once in a while.
Yeah. And then they made one for Rachel, which is what they hang in the noose and what Lewis carries out at the end of the movie. And then they also made one for Gage.
That's really where all their budget went, was that puppet.
Yeah. But yeah, they did a lot to make his performance work. One thing they did that they normally don't do is they mostly shot the movie in sequence so that they could do all the happy scenes at the beginning of filming so that Miko could get comfortable with the cast and crew, and then they ended shooting with all like the unhappy shit. And he has like had a pretty good career as a child actor. He was also in Kindergarten Cop, New Nightmare, Apollo 13, Full House. So a lot of stuff.
He was in Kindergarten Cop?
Yeah, he's I forget which one he is, but I think he's
The second greatest Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
what's better than Kindergarten Cop?
Conan the Barbarian.
I haven't seen it.
Conan, what is best in life?
I thought you were going to say Jingle All the Way.
That's third.
That's third. Yeah, that's pretty good. I thought, I like him. I thought he did a good job.
No.
All right, so let's wrap up characters. Victor Pascal, played by Brad Greenquist. Ron, you said you liked this performance.
Second best, right after Judd. I love this character. I loved everything about it.
They added a lot of Pascal.
They elevated him a little bit from the book, which I liked.
Yeah, no, I prefer this. In the book, he shows up as a manifestation exactly once, and then the rest of it's kind of implied.
So yeah, he does show up in like Ellie's dreams, what you only find out about secondhand.
Yeah, where she's like recounting it,
and it's kind of implied that he's kind of helping Rachel along as she's making her way back home, but it's not explicit like it is in the movie with him like sitting next to her on the plane and all that.
Plane, that was great.
I think it works really good as like a visual representation for film, which is probably why it's in there.
I like how it's done in the book, and I like how it's done in the movie. I don't think either is better. I think they both work for their medium.
Yeah, exactly. I think that this is a case of Stephen King because sometimes people say he doesn't understand screenplays, like what Maximum Overdrive, or
which he also wrote and directed.
Yeah, where people when they like take the film too seriously and analyze it, they're like, this is why Stephen King should stick to novel. I think this is an example of where he understands the two mediums and goes, people need to see this so they know what's going on.
And the marketing for the movie, the posters, the VHS covers, like it's him, even though he's like relatively a small part of the movie.
Yeah.
But his face, him and the cat, are plastered all over everything.
And I love it.
Yeah.
I love the poster for this movie.
I do too.
All right.
It's very iconic.
You're not going to believe this. Until you said that, I honest to God thought that poster, because it's just the eyes, right? And like a forehead.
Mm-hmm. And the cat's in the lower half.
I swear that was Judd's character. And I don't know why I always thought
Google the poster.
Holy hell. That is absolutely Victor.
And it's actually I as a kid, like I was very familiar with this poster as a kid because it was up in the video store in my town, like in every video store. But I don't think I realized it was him either as a kid. I just thought it was like a grotesque.
Yeah, it's a spooky thing on the spooky movie poster.
And he's a ghost, but he's a ghost, a gross, creepy ghost that's portrayed as like a guardian angel. And Mary Lambert like said that to him explicitly, so he actually put pictures of angels throughout his copy of the script to constantly remind himself that that's how he's supposed to be playing Victor Pascal.
I'm not a spooky ghost.
Yeah. I look like a spooky ghost, but that's not my role.
Every time I see this movie as an adult, I'm always sitting there thinking, man, what if death's really like that? And you have to wander around looking exactly like you died.
I haven't really watched much of it, but the girls watch this sitcom called Ghosts.
Yeah.
Where
I love that show.
Yeah, they like it a lot, and what I've seen of it is decent. But it's about a couple who inherits like an old mansion, and the wife can see ghosts and the husband can't. And there are ghosts that live there, and some of them are like have been there for hundreds of years, and some of them have been there for decades, but they're all as they are when they died.
It reminds me of The Exorcist 3, where the kid that got decapitated, his ghost, or the dream version of him, has his head stapled back on.
Like there's one.
Hey,
go ahead.
When did American Werewolf in London come out?
84, 5.
Early 80s?
Yeah.
Because that's who Pascal reminded me of, was his friend that gets killed and kind of follows him around.
Yeah.
81.
And I just wonder if there was some influence there.
Very possible. Because that was obviously like very influential 80s horror movie.
Yeah.
All right. And then real quick, I forgot to list him before we move on to scary shit. The most important character, Winston Churchill.
Played by...
They said they used between 7 and 9 different cats.
Wow.
For the...
Wow.
I'm surprised they could find that many that looked exactly like that.
No. Cat's super iconic, and the movie would not be the movie it is without
It seems a little bit more aggressive in the movie, too.
Well, and that's something I was going to bring up in scary shit. So
Yeah.
let's go to scary shit.
Kill you all! I'll drive you crazy, and I'll kill you all! I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
Before I ask you guys why this movie is so scary, something I wanted to bring up in scary shit is that the people and animals that are reanimated in the Micmac burial ground, they are not as varied as they are in the novel. In the novel, there's something off about anyone or anything that comes back from the burial ground, but they all aren't inherently evil and violent like Gage is. But in the movie, basically everything that gets reanimated is bad.
Yeah.
And aggressive. So for instance, Judd's dog Spot, when he's brought back to life in the book, he's not bad. He's not aggressive. He doesn't try to hurt people.
Just licks you with his cold tongue.
He just licks you with his cold tongue. And the quote from the book is, he smells like dirt, and Judd's mom tells him to give him a bath, and he says, "Louis, it's like I was washing dead meat." The dog isn't evil. There's just something off about him. And it's in the book, it's kind of the same way with Church. He's not an evil cat, but there's something wrong with him.
It mangles a bunch of animals, but it doesn't bring them to Lewis and drop them in the bathtub.
It doesn't throw them in the bathtub.
Yeah, he finds them outside.
Yeah. He leaves them on the porch like any cat would.
Yeah. He just didn't do stuff like that before. So
I think they kind of up the evil for Timmy Baterman and both Spot and Gage. And they also kind of imply that Gage has some kind of physical strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. He'd almost have to.
How the fuck did Gage get Rachel up in that noose?
A pulley system, Ryan.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the book, he just calls her over. She goes, "Oh, Gage," and then he just stabs her.
Yeah, and her body's
lying on
slumped
the
in
floor.
the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't set stuff up. Granted, in the book, he probably could have done something because he has some sort of supernatural power. We just don't know the extent of it.
Yeah, but there's never an implication that he has
super strength.
Yeah, and maybe not super strength, but enhanced strength.
Yeah,
he's not tussling with Fred Gwyn on the ground.
He's just talking more like an adult and knows things.
She fucked all your friends, Judd.
When they do the third Pet Sematary adaptation, I want that.
Yeah.
That's my one thing.
Okay. Ron, is this movie scary?
It's unsettling. I don't know. I don't know if I would call it scary, but it's just unnerving, and I don't like to think about it. I don't like how it makes me my reaction to it, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, everything from the Gage thing, honestly, the most thing, one of the things that upset me a lot about this movie too was when he has to kill the cat again. And that's just super sad. I mean, that's
Go on, be dead.
Yes. No, this poor cat.
Daniel, is this movie scary?
You know how I told you I took a nap before I came over here?
Yeah.
I already had a nightmare. You and I were walking in a circular spiral graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God.
Concentric circles. Yeah, that's just we didn't say it was the Pet Sematary of my dream, but we were walking through a dark, foggy ass graveyard, talking about something I can't quite recall.
This movie scared me deeply as a kid. And then when I read the book as an adult, it scared me even more. And then when I rewatched the movie a couple years ago for the first time after reading the book, I still thought it was pretty scary, but I was definitely a lot less desensitized to it.
Yeah.
But it still hits me on a personal level. And then when I watched it last night, and I watched it in almost one sitting, and I have a funny story about that. I watched all but the last 10 minutes before I went to bed last night.
How could you do that? You monster.
I'll go ahead and tell you right now. So I'm watching it. We have a TV in the bedroom, and I have to wait till everyone's asleep before I watch horror movies because I'm the only person in the house who can tolerate them. So I'm watching it, and it gets to the point where Gage drops Rachel's dead body in the noose on top of Lewis, and he starts screaming. And I had it at a pretty decent volume, and nothing was too loud until it got to that point, and Lewis just starts screaming, and then Beck wakes up screaming. And turn it off, turn it fucking off, turn it off. I'm like, okay.
Oh
So I turned it off and rolled over and went to bed, and then watched the last 10 minutes this morning because I didn't want to give anybody a heart attack.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So when Mary Lambert, got Fred Gwynn, he didn't want to do it until he read the script. He's like, I don't want to do a horror movie. But then she had him read the script, and he wanted to do it because he lost a child. His son drowned.
Oh, no.
Yeah, his son drowned in a pool as a kid.
Oh.
And he being the smart man he is, he recognized that this isn't just like a slasher gut 'em up horror movie. It's a much deeper story about life and about death and about how people view death and communicate it, and it's an important story because it gets people talking about these certain things. So he wanted to do it. And another story they told in the making of documentary was the director of photography. Prior to this, he was the director of photography, I think it was on Halloween Part 2, and he had a really bad experience on that movie, and he decided he never wanted to do horror movies again. And Mary Lambert tried to recruit him for this movie because she admired his work, and he told her no. But he was friends with Fred Gwynn, and Fred Gwynn had convinced him to do the movie by saying this is more than a horror movie. This is not Halloween.
This is a step beyond. You have to go beyond the barrier for this movie.
Daniel, what's the scariest part of the movie for you?
The scariest, the most impactful is the funeral scene when the coffin drops, but I don't know if that's what scares me the most. Man, probably just when Rachel first comes back and sees Zelda, and then you see Gage dressed up in his little dapper uniform.
Oz the Great and Terrible.
Great and Terrible. I'm sitting there. If I saw a kid come to me dressed like that, I would drop kick them. I wouldn't take any chances. I would risk prison. I'd be like, nope, seen too many horror movies. I'd use my kung fu, and I'd be like,
Yeah. Ron, what's the scariest or most unsettling moment of this movie for you?
I think for me it was the verbal taunts from Gage. It's because it was sweet and innocent, but you knew that the intent was, I want to murder you.
Yeah.
The I want to play with you and that kind of stuff. That's just like nails on a chalkboard to me.
I want to play a game.
Yeah.
If I'm getting annoying with these, just tell me to shut up. But another great story from behind the scenes on the set of Pet Sematary.
I like these, so.
So.
I'm into these.
They actually had 5 or 6 different baby coffins that they used for the funeral scene. And there was an interview with one of the prop people, and they were talking about cleaning up from the funeral scene afterwards, after all the filming was done. And they said, okay, all you have to do is go in there and basically just get the flowers and get the coffins and take and reset all the pews, and everything's good. We've already got the dummies. Everything's gone. So she went, and he and another guy picked up one of the coffins to move it, and he lost his grip and dropped it, and they accidentally left one dummy in the coffin.
Oh my god! Oh my god.
And the dummy came tumbling out at her, and she immediately turned around and made a beeline out the door and ran directly into a pole.
I would be so done. I'm like, no. I'm done with this.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, hey, I've got one for you.
Yeah.
So when I'm watching movies, I actually like catching continuity errors.
There are a couple. Go ahead.
All right. I'll put this one out there. You tell me if you know it already. When he is digging Gage up, when he first goes down, there's a whole bunch of flowers around the tombstone.
Mm-hmm.
And it cuts to Pascal, and he has a conversation with him. But when it cuts back to the dad, he's sitting there, and there's no flowers around the tombstone.
Yep.
It's minor, but that's one of the things I'm watch for.
There's that one, and he changes shirts in the middle of a scene in the first half of the movie. It's
did not catch that.
It's basically the same shirt, except for in one scene it has a collar, and the other scene it doesn't have a collar.
Kiss me, fat boy.
Kiss me, fat boy. Ron, in the novel, Rachel admits to Lewis that she learned how to give hand jobs with a loofah in the Girl Scouts. As the local deviant, can you elaborate on this more?
I thought I was
never in Girl Scouts.
I thought I was the local deviant.
Well, can you elaborate more?
I mean, the priest showed me how to do it at church camp, so.
What kind of loofah was it?
A green one.
Was it like one on a stick? Was it a loofah on a stick?
No, it was one of those ones that you like put over your hand.
Like a glove?
Yeah. Like a glove
Work 'em
loofah.
like a Muppet?
Loofah.
Did he Jim Henson you?
I Jim Henson'd him.
Oh.
I'm the deviant, he wasn't.
Oh.
God.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
And then moving to Power of Christ Compels You, just a short thing. We won't be here long. In the novel, the story of Lazarus and the resurrection of Christ are referenced constantly. And that both of those themes are completely excised from the movie. Daniel, do you have any thoughts as to why? Or
Honestly, every time I, when I do the book and then the movie, back to back, I always confuse which one had which.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this movie had it, so when I watched it this time, I was like, oh, that's not in here.
Like at all.
And I was like, and I only thought was, I wonder why. I have no idea.
You would think, the story takes place in a very, rural New England area where people are typically very Christian.
And it's not like in the 80s, religion was a big turnoff in a movie, as long as it wasn't, super Jesus-y.
Yeah.
But that's just, normal Jesus-y.
And it's normal for Stephen King adaptations to have some religious aspects.
Yeah,
like The Stand. The Stand has a lot of religious aspects to it.
So I was just... Honestly, I was more curious than anything else. The only thing I could figure was Stephen King was taking lines to things going, I gotta get it to 90 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's probably true.
That's the only explanation I've been able to come up with.
Ron, I know you have a degree in comparative religious studies. Can you...
I've got nothing.
Okay, that's fine. All right,
but
go ahead.
All right, well, let me ask you this: Did you guys feel like the story with, I can't remember the guy. I'm terrible with names with movies. The one guy that was buried, he buried his son, and the son came back.
Timmy Baterman.
Timmy. Did you draw parallels between that and Frankenstein?
Oh,
he made this monster and he was
okay.
He was protecting it.
I said I wasn't going to bring this one up because I've been bringing it up too many times.
Sorry, Daniel. I'm so sorry, Daniel.
I love it.
So, origin of the novel. At the point where Stephen King wrote this, he was a guest professor of writing at the University of Maine, Orono, and they actually moved to this little small town in Maine, and they rented this big house that was right on the road where oil trucks went back and forth all day. And there's a lot of stories that go there, but there was a pet cemetery, and because the trucks killed so many pets there, and his daughter's cat did die, and that was kind of the original inspiration for the novel. But in addition to that, while he was there working and writing this novel, he was teaching a course at the University of Maine on 19th century Gothic horror, and they were in that course that Stephen King taught. They covered 3 books: A Strange Tale of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Dracula, and Frankenstein.
Bangers. Well, I haven't read Dr. Jekyll yet.
It's a banger too.
Okay.
And you can see influences of all 3 of those in Pet Sematary. So yes, I think that the Frankenstein parallel with Timmy Baterman is real. And yes. Good job. Gold star, Ron.
Nice.
You get a check plus.
check plus.
Oh my God, are you Stephen King? No, I'm Dean Koontz. Oh.
All right, Kings and Koontzes. Daniel, what is your king for Pet Sematary?
My king is Judd. I don't know what else to say. He's still being parodied. He's super memorable, and I know that, like, we talked about how they cut out a lot of the internal dialogue, but a lot of the stuff they kept from Judd, they kept as like voiceovers, especially for the ending. Yeah, and it gets the themes nice and across, just in case you missed them, without being overbearing.
The soil of a man's heart is stonier. He plants what he can and he tends it.
Any other person trying to play this role is always just going to be chasing this guy's coattails, and I feel so bad for them.
I think John Lithgow does a pretty good job in the remake.
I will rewatch it.
But to me, like, he doesn't try to replicate Fred Gwynne.
He just tries to play Judd.
Yeah, and I think he does a good job.
Yeah.
Great. I am a little biased because I've grown up with John Lithgow in so many different movies. So, but I think he's one of the sprinkles on the turd sundae that is Pet Sematary 2019.
Yeah.
But no, he's still, even though I think he's good, he can't touch Fred Gwynne. And, by the way, who is also my king, because I cannot watch this movie or think about this movie without talking like this.
Yeah.
You can't go across that road.
Your impression's better, but I do the same thing, so.
You know, Lewis, women are liars, but sometimes I think men are better.
Yeah, this is what my coworkers are in for the next at least 3 days.
Ron, what is your king? Ron?
Uh-oh. I think I lost you.
No.
We can hear you.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. What's your king for Pet Sematary?
My absolute favorite part of this movie is when Gage gets jabbed in the neck and he just goes, "No fair." It's like whatever the zombie or demon or whatever the hell's wrong with this kid, it knows it's beaten, but it's still a little kid. And he's like, "Oh, you cheated." No
Fuck
fair.
you. And Daniel. And real quick. I'm not even going to mention. Okay. Daniel, your Koontz. Your Koontz.
My Koontz is when Cage gets stabbed in the neck, and before he goes no fair, which is effective, he goes because it takes me out of it every time. I'm like, man, I'm sure that noise sounds creepy to somebody, but every time I hear it, I'm like,
I've never laughed at it. I've always. I mean, I can't actually picture the noise in my head. Like, when I think about it in my head, I can hear him saying "no fair" because that sticks out to me. But like the noise that you're talking about, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I think somebody came up behind the kid during the scene and probably pinched them or something to get like a discomforted noise, because he goes right into crying. Mm-hmm. But that noise, for some reason, It's not, but it sounds like they ran it through a filter. And I'm just sure that that's something kids can do.
Yeah.
But
my Koontz is, I wish the time they spent on Missy Dandridge, they would have spent on Judd's wife.
that's fair.
Yeah. And Ron.
My Koontz was the unnecessary cracking and snapping of the frozen cat, peeling it off the lawn.
The sticky tape?
That was... Yeah, I did not need to hear any of that.
That was great.
Snap, crackle, pop.
Lewis, his head swiveled like it was set on ball bearings.
Oh my God.
Okay. Going to rankings, it's my number 2. I think it's the best thing we've watched, except the original It miniseries is just too nostalgic for me. It's my favorite, so Pet Sematary is firmly at my number 2.
It's also my number 2.
It's also your number 2 under The Ring?
Yes, sir.
Okay, which, again, you've always identified The Ring as your favorite horror movie. I've always identified the original It as my favorite, so it's better than everything except for our 2 favorites.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ron, if you think you enjoy this and you might do some more episodes, we can start you a list as well, or you can give it a...
I think I've only listened to one now, so I can't remember what that one was. What was the other one we did?
The Star Wars Holiday Special.
Which one do you like more?
Oh God, Pet Sematary.
His number 1 and 2 are funny.
Okay, easy peasy lemon queasy. All right, going to Zombie Day, and I mentioned this earlier. So Smucky the cat was Naomi King's, Stephen King's daughter. Her cat died in the road in Maine, and that's what gave him the idea for the story. And one of the burial plots in the Pet Sematary in the movie is for Smucky the cat.
He was obedient.
Aww.
Yeah. And then
He was anything but.
Ellie's
My daughter's a liar.
And then Ellie's rant about why did God take my cat? Why did God get his own cat? That's what his daughter actually said. That's the fit that she had that night after her cat died. All right, so moving into homework as we start to wind down. In the novel, the folks that are reanimated by the Micmac burial ground can reveal dark secrets about other people. If you came back to life, what dark secrets would you reveal about your co-hosts, Daniel?
Alrighty, let me get my best zombie voice going. Ryan, do you remember what you and Daniel did at the graveyard?
Shut up. We agree not to talk about that anymore.
Perhaps we should tell your bosses what Lonely Little Boy Productions used to put on the internet.
My bosses don't even know about this Lonely Little Boy production, let alone stuff we used to do.
Yeah.
I've never even told Ron about plushy porn.
Yeah, so there you go. And for Ron, I don't know him nearly as well, so it'd probably be something about kitty litter. This is the most interaction I've ever had with the guy. So.
Okay. No?
is via this and times I've bought stuff.
Well, I know you swore me to secrecy.
Yeah.
And I know that this is still within the statute of limitations. But I just can't not bring up the time you sat out in your car outside of Brian Michael Bendis' house with a gun for 3 hours.
What?
He ruined Superman. So.
He knows what he did.
And Ron, I don't know if I should even go this far.
Oh God.
But
Don't do it.
Donnie told me what you said to him in the back room that night.
That dinosaur is a liar.
All right, I'll table it for now, but I'm gonna check with Donnie, and if he tells me he's telling the truth, I'm gonna come back to you on this.
Look, I love that
I have video of Donnie.
I love that you went silly, and I just sat there and thought, I need to think of the most fucked up shit we've done.
What about the dinosaur, Ron?
I have video of Donnie taking a shit in a mall planter.
Well, that's because the Four Horsemen bathroom is disgusting.
That's true. The planter was much more hygienic.
I had diarrhea back there once, and it was the worst time.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have diarrhea of the mouth in the front part of the store, so.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
All right, Ron. What secret?
I had nothing. I literally got nothing. For you, I was going to tell the world that you're actually a replicant. You're not even a real person. And for Daniel, he wears socks in the shower.
But I do, though. I gotta keep my feet dry.
I have this running joke with Beck that I don't wash my feet. Because I did it once, and she noticed, and she said, "You didn't wash your feet?" And I you do? So for the
water goes down.
Yes. So for years, I just always, every time like something happens, like even like if we're about to go out on a date, I say, "Hey, Beck, I washed my feet tonight." Just
it's a special day.
So romantic.
Or sometimes, like if I have to give Drake a shower, like I'll tell her, and don't worry, just because you wanted me to, I washed his feet. Drake, and I even got Drake in on it. It's like, can you believe that girls wash their feet, Drake? He's like, that's silly.
Toe jam is an every time snack, Ryan.
You wash between your toes?
No, because I want the jam.
Oh, okay. On crackers. It's good on crackers. Okay.
Man, I'm hungry. This diet's gonna kill me.
Yeah. Diet suck. Question for the listeners. Do you love the Ramones? Check mark the box yes, no, or maybe, and leave the note in my desk after class, and I'll find out. And to answer your question from earlier, Ron, so Stephen King is a huge Ramones fan, and
I did not know
and
that.
Blitzkrieg Bop is referenced constantly throughout the novel. Once Lewis goes off the deep end, he constantly mutters to himself, "Hey, ho, let's go." It's like
really?
Yeah, that's what he says.
So
like
that's his comfort chant.
That's what he says when he like pulls up to the cemetery as he's hopping up over the fence as he's about to dig up Gage. Like that's like his mantra that like keeps him going. So
that's really cool.
When they wrote the script, they're like, okay, he actually picked out all the songs for the movie, and he picked out the 2 Ramone songs that are in it, and then he wanted them to write a theme song for it, and he reached out to them, and he actually had in the documentary it says he had them over, he flew them out to Maine and had them over for dinner at his house, and they talked about it, and then they wrote the song for the movie.
Could you imagine getting just famous enough to get your favorite band to hang out with you?
That's awesome.
Like all my favorite, like no, the music I listen to, like none of those people are like alive.
Yeah. I'd invite the dudes who did the Detroit Metal City soundtrack over.
That's a good one. Okay, for further reading, if you love this movie and you haven't read the book, fucking read the book. I'm not going to recommend other movies. Just
read the book.
Read the book. But if you are interested, check out Unearthed and Untold, The Path to Pet Sematary, which is the making of documentary, which I have not shut up about all night because I literally just watched it right before. So I apologize for that.
Silent Hill 2 has one of its endings is a Pet Sematary reference. So
Skeksis.
Yeah. The rebirth ending.
Ron, do you have a recommendation for people who enjoy Pet Sematary?
Frontal lobotomy.
You son of a bitch. Okay, upcoming on the Horror of Babylon, for the next few Sundays. Next Sunday, we are going to be reviewing the film classic, Pet Sematary 2. The following Sunday, we will be reviewing the remake of Pet Sematary from 2019. And then our next novel episode will be on Sunday, June 18th, where we are reading another book that fucks me up, in not really a good way, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov.
My third favorite book.
Your third favorite book. Son of a bitch. And then the following Sunday, we're going to watch both Lolita films, both 1962 and 1997, and compare and contrast the two. And then our next book episode after that will be the first Sunday in July, where we are reading the manga pedophile masterpiece MW by Osamu Tezuka. And then our next set of bonus episodes releasing on Thursdays. This coming Thursday, we're going to review the short story The Boogeyman by Stephen King. So the next Thursday, we can release an episode on the brand new movie, The Boogeyman, based on the short novel by Stephen King. The next 2 Thursdays after that will be 2 Treehouse of Horror of Babylon episodes on the Simpsons parodies of The Ring and The Blob. And then the last Thursday in June and the first Thursday in July will be our next 2 Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming sponsored bonus episodes, where we will review The Toxic Avenger from 1984 and Fly, directed by Yoko Ono and John Lennon from 1970, which...
No, are you really doing that?
I have watched part of it already, and you're a son of a bitch. I hate you.
I have a meme for this. I just gotta find it.
Oh my god, I can't believe you're devoting time to this.
I'm going... That episode is going to be 90% bitching about you. And how much you
totally fair.
How much you suck.
All it said was, imagine being able to ruin the Beatles with an ass like this, and it's Yoko Ono's ass, and it's so small.
Fucking Yoko. All right. We want to say thank you to our patrons: Abigail the First, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, and
Logan,
the Full Metal Patron. All right, thank you to Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming, which you can visit at the Morgantown Mall in Morgantown, West Virginia, or the Mall at Robinson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and say hello to this guy.
Hey, guys.
Ronald III, Grampus of Christmas.
Who would probably survive Scream.
Would probably survive Scream. He would just talk Ghostface's head off.
Be more like Scary Movie.
Yeah, be a lot more like... He could be Liam
Neeson.
He could be... I'm so mad I can't even say it now. He could be Mr. Magoo.
Thank you.
In Scary Movie. Leslie Nielsen.
Yes.
Ron, top 3.
That'd be great.
In the show, give us your top 3 Leslie Nielsen movies.
Oh God. I don't know. Airplane. I can only think Airplane.
I'm gonna.
What else is he in? The vampire one.
Dracula, Dead and Loving It. I'm gonna say Wrongfully Accused, collectively the Naked Gun movies, and then probably Airplane. But I would also accept Dracula, Dead and Loving It, Mr. Magoo.
Oh my God! I forgot he did Mr. Magoo.
Yeah, he's also in Creepshow.
He does really good at Creepshow.
Yeah. He buries a guy up to his neck in the sand at the beach, and just waits for the tide to come in and drown him.
I can hold my breath for a long time. I love that.
Yeah, it's really great. All right. Thank you both for rewatching Pet Sematary and recording with me tonight.
It's a fun time.
Yes. Thanks for
having us. Stay tuned for our socials and stay scary.
Stay scary, everybody.
Ron.
Yes. Do I say stay scary? Stay scary, everyone.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher, and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that The Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible and all other major podcast apps. Stay scary.